It was late autumn when Clara Givens moved into the old Renford house on the edge of the moors. The place had been empty for years, ever since the former owner, a widowed historian named Edwin Rowe, had disappeared one night without a trace. The villagers whispered about it even now, though never above a murmur. Clara was not a superstitious woman. She was a restorer of books, practical and patient, and she had come to the countryside for quiet. The house, though large and neglected, was cheap and perfect for her work. Thick stone walls, high ceilings, and a small study with a window overlooking the moor. When she first arrived, the air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of old paper and dust. The room still held Edwin's things, his desk, a few framed sketches, shelves full of local history texts. She meant to sort through them later, but for the first few nights she simply cleaned and unpacked. By the fifth evening she began to hear it, faint tapping sounds in the walls. At first she thought it was the wind or the creak of an old house settling, but the sound came regularly like a sequence, tap, 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 always after dusk. The diary. While clearing the study, Clara discovered a narrow drawer built into the underside of the desk. Inside lay a slim, leather-bound journal with the name E. Rowe embossed in gold. Most of the entries were ordinary, notes about the history of Renford, sketches of stone circles and burial mounds scattered across the moor. But near the end, the writing became erratic. October 11th, the tapping again, Morse, I think. HELP. October 14th, she is in the walls. I hear her breathing when the lamps go out. October 16th, if anyone finds this, do not open the west parlor after sundown. Clara felt a flicker of unease. She went to the west parlor at once. It was an unused room, its doors swollen shut with age. She pressed her ear against the wood. Nothing, only the wind sighing through the chimney. That night, however, the tapping came again, louder, and this time unmistakably from the west parlor. The light in the walls. Unable to sleep, Clara fetched a lantern and pried open the parlor door. The air that rushed out was cold, almost damp. The room was empty except for an upright piano against the far wall, its keys yellowed with age. A faint smell of mildew hung in the air. She crossed the room, running her hand along the wall. The tapping began again, right beneath her palm. Startled, she stepped back. The wall sounded hollow. Behind the piano she noticed a vertical seam in the plaster, a hidden door. It took her nearly half an hour to pry it open. Behind it was a narrow passage leading downward into darkness. The air grew colder as she descended, her lantern flickering. At the bottom was a small stone cellar, barely tall enough to stand in. A single chair sat in the center, and against the wall another piano, but this one had no strings. Instead, its interior was lined with thin copper wires running through the walls, up toward the house above. Clara realized with horror that the tapping wasn't in the walls at all. It was the walls. The piano's wires were connected somehow to the structure of the house itself, turning it into a kind of enormous, resonating instrument. Someone, or something, was using the house to speak. The final entry. She returned to Edwin Rowe's diary, flipping through the last few pages by lamplight. There was one unfinished line at the very end, scrawled so violently the pen had torn through the page. She came back in the music. That night, Clara dreamed of a woman's voice humming a lullaby, faint, then growing louder until it became a cry. She woke to the sound of piano keys echoing through the house, though no one was at the instrument. She ran to the west parlor. The piano there was playing itself, its keys striking in uneven rhythm. In the lamplight, she saw movement in the reflection of the cracked mirror above the mantel, someone standing behind her. But when she turned, the room was empty. The tapping began again, on the ceiling, on the floor, from the walls. Each sound merged into a single rising hum. The house itself seemed to vibrate. She tried to run, but her legs felt heavy, as if the air had turned to water. The hum grew until it was almost a scream. Then silence. Epilogue. A month later, the villagers noticed smoke no longer rose from Renford's chimney. When the constable forced open the door, the house was dark and still. The furniture sat exactly as it had before, except that the piano in the west parlor was missing a key. On the desk upstairs lay Clara's notebook. Her final entry read, October 28th. The voice in the walls is clearer tonight. She says she isn't trapped here. She says I am. And below that, faintly scratched into the wood itself, in letters so small they were nearly invisible, HELP,